Hello again. It's time for another market update. My name is JT Cardin with the agency Scottsdale, and it is a pleasure to be back on the camera again. Took a bit of a break there. It is the summer. I've got two kids. Decided to do some, normal family summer stuff. I'm back now, ready to get back to the grind, and with that, we have the second quarter of 2026 update. Now, as a surprise to no one, this is a pretty slow time of the year for just about every sector, but especially real estate here in the Phoenix area. It's hot. Anyone who can be literally anywhere else goes anywhere else for as long as they can, at least until monsoon season is over and the temperatures start dropping, which is a shame because the monsoons are pretty epic, and we've actually had two good haboobs so far this year, which are local dust storms. But the markets themselves have behaved and performed, I would say, as expected, in that numbers were a bit suppressed in terms of how many homes were sold. Prices did fairly well, but overall, things are looking as I would expect them to look. And as a general trend, I would say across the valley, we're just seeing a general wall being hit. Now, let me clarify, that doesn't mean there's a market downturn. Now, these graphs do show a very slight, very, very slight slope down, but I would say as a general rule, homes are more likely to hold their value than anything else right now. The only really place that had a surprising statistic this quarter would be Scottsdale, that had a very strong surge in homes sold in the second quarter, like a very strong surge. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. And general trends, I know I'm just showing you two graphs here, but general trends, I would say, point to just a supply and demand that are fairly stable in these markets. You've got the market tilting ever so slightly in the favor of buyers, but even if these trends continue for years, which is somewhat unlikely, I still don't think we're going to see any distinct impacts to the market at this point. My expectation is that the rest of the year is going to show further kind of stagnation. Things are just going to kind of plateau. We're not going to see any really dramatic moves up or down in any of these markets. There have been some great sales in the past month, especially in Paradise Valley and Arcadia, but a handful of sales isn't necessarily going to dramatically impact the overall trend of these markets. So overall, regardless of where you're at in the luxury corridor, homes are generally sitting for 75 to 100 days before they're sold. Now, that's an average, and I do mean that quite liberally. There are a lot of homes that have been selling within a week of going on the market, and they tend to be the very market-ready, generally new-build homes that are just fabulous from top to bottom. Then there's also a very strong cohort of homes that are sitting on the market for 150 days. So again, that is the average, but realistically, either expect your home to sell fairly quickly or fairly slowly, with a smattering of sales going on in between. Let's go ahead and move on to a kind of deeper dive into each of these submarkets and get an idea of what's going on individually. We're going to start our journey off with beautiful Biltmore, my favorite part of the valley, even though it really is the most temperamental of any of these markets. Now, all of quarter two is below the 3-year trend line for Biltmore. Doesn't mean much, as you can see in these graphs. It can go well below and rebound well above that trend line. But on average, we're seeing longer time on market, worse sale to list ratio, and a slight decrease in price per square foot. To put numbers to that, overall, 33% more homes were closed year over year, 11% longer days on market, a 13% increase in price per square foot, but a 2% drop in sale to list price ratio and a 6% drop in sales price. Now, these show a slightly depressed market in the area. However, Biltmore's highest price per square foot this year, all three of the highest prices per square foot have outdone anything in 2023 and 2025. Now, with Biltmore's inventory remaining pretty high and a lot of these homes on the market having been on the market for quite a while, I actually anticipate these numbers to look a little bit worse in Q3. Not a ton. But to see this inventory turn over, I think you're going to need to see some pretty substantial drops in price because if homes sit on the market, it's generally not the market's fault. It's generally the fault of whoever priced the home. So until we see some of those changes, I don't think any homes are going to be moving particularly quickly. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a very slight drop in price per square foot and sale price in the Biltmore area through the end of the year. Now we move on to my old stomping grounds, Arcadia. To give you a quick rundown on the specific numbers, Arcadia had an 11% drop in number of homes closed, which is pretty substantial given that last quarter they saw a 41% drop in the number of homes closed year over year. They did, however, see a 22% drop in time on market, a 9% drop in dollars per square foot. Sale to list price remained the same, and then the sale price actually went up about 13%, which is great. I think in large part that's because we saw a new ceiling for what buyers are willing to pay in the Arcadia area, and that happened to be at 6415 East Exeter. This is a very strong pocket for Arcadia luxury. When there's a big home sale in Arcadia, that's most likely where it's going to be. Big estates, big homes, beautiful homes. This one sold for over $17 million, which puts it at over $2,000 a square foot. Now, I don't care where you live, that's a lot of money. That's Paradise Valley prices in Arcadia, which is great, and I'm sure the seller is thrilled with that price point, but I don't think that's going to be the norm anytime soon. Overall, what I anticipate is that we're getting pretty close to the maximum average for Arcadia, at least in terms of sale price and price per square foot, and that's in large part going to be constrained simply by the lot size. Paradise Valley had the foresight to say lots must be a minimum 1 acre, which means you're going to have big homes and a lot of room to maneuver. Arcadia didn't have that. There are a lot of homes that are in the half acre to quarter acre size, and they sell for a lot because they've been completely torn down and the builder put in basement, first, and second story. So you're maximizing the square footage for resale. People are paying it, but it leaves you with a home that's a bit overbuilt for the space, which also means you have enough yard for a token pool more often than not, and enough space to kind of schmooze your neighbors at a little backyard barbecue. But in terms of real property, you're not working with a lot. And I think that's ultimately going to be what limits Arcadia more than anything else. There are still big lots, don't get me wrong, but it's not as consistent as what you would see in Paradise Valley. And that's why I think we're going to see continued $10 million plus home sales. We saw 4 this year so far, compared to 3 in all of 2025. So things are looking up in that sense. But I don't think they're going to become the norm just because the home size, the lot size, doesn't support much higher numbers. Now, if you'll recall, about 30 seconds ago, I shared that Arcadia sold a whopping 4 homes over $10 million this year, and that was a substantial increase from the 3 that were sold over that price point in all of last year. Yeah, Paradise Valley is just built different. In 2025, they sold 20 homes over $10 million, and this year so far, over 25 homes have been sold over the $10 million threshold. That's just through Q2. There have been more homes sold over that price point already, including a new record at just over $40 million for a home in Paradise Valley, which is just absolutely bonkers. And that means that Paradise Valley alone this year has sold more homes over $10 million than were sold in all of the Phoenix metro area in 2023 or any time before that. Clearly, they're doing just fine. Not worried about them. They continue to be the golden goose of the luxury corridor here in Phoenix. Now, going into the numbers a bit deeper, they actually had a pretty stable year, I would say, or I guess a pretty stable quarter, with 4% increase in amount of homes closed, 2% longer time on market, 2% increase in dollars per square foot, 2% drop in sale to list price, which is a bit of a bummer, and a 2% drop in overall sale price. Now, this is where I think it's important to note that Paradise Valley is poised to really just, I don't want to say rocket off, but just even more firmly cement itself into the national and global luxury scene, because there are 37 homes listed right now over $10 million. And there are several that I know of that are still being prepared to list by the end of the year, hopefully. And like I said, there was a home sold within the past few weeks that went over $40 million. So I don't think the numbers are going to go down anytime soon. In fact, I foresee a continued trend towards $10 million plus homes. But I think it's going to take a while for us to get to the point where that is far and away the norm. But either way, in terms of sale price, Paradise Valley is firmly the leader of the pack here. And I don't foresee any major issues coming through, even with a lot of homes hitting the market that maybe aren't as updated as buyers would like. You're still buying in the Paradise Valley zip code, and you're paying for the land and the bones of the home, because at that price point, the aesthetics are almost an afterthought in terms of price. All right, finally, we're going to round out this list with Scottsdale. They experienced an extremely unusual surge in number of homes closed this year. Specifically, they had 258 homes close. That is an 84% increase year over year. That is obscene. I don't know that I've seen those numbers since the early 2020s. However, there was also a 15% increase in days on market, a 2% drop in dollars per square foot, and a 2% increase in sale price, with a pretty steady sale to list price ratio, which means absolutely nothing because it's been essentially the same for the past several years. I will say Scottsdale remains the most stable luxury market in the corridor by a long shot. I mean, if you're looking at the overall graphs, which I'll show up at the screen at the end again, it has remained almost unusually steady in sale price and dollars per square foot. Not a bad thing, but it just makes it a little weird that many more homes sold, but they're not pushing the envelope in terms of how much they're getting for their home. So just something to chew on. Overall, Scottsdale had a pretty solid quarter, obviously. Any change in Scottsdale's trajectory will likely come in Q4 of this year. Active listings right now suggest an increase in sale price and price per square foot. However, those homes are already at the average days on market for the past few years. So if they're able to pull off a higher dollar per square foot or sale price, that's great. But realistically, what I foresee is that those numbers are going to come down, and they're probably going to be closer to what the average is generally, and just have a slightly higher time on market. So not a big deal, just, something to keep in mind if you're looking in the Scottsdale market. And that's it for a rundown of how the market performed here in the luxury corridor for quarter 2 in 2026. Like I said at the beginning, overall, the trend is overwhelmingly plateau. Nothing remarkable to talk about. Scottsdale obviously saw a huge surge in number of homes sold, but that's really the only metric that was super worthwhile that changed. Paradise Valley is poised to become a juggernaut in terms of price, but you can still find homes that are somewhat reasonable. Overall, I think this balanced market is going to continue. I don't think we're going to see any strong moves in any particular direction, which means if you're looking to sell your home, it is more important than ever to work with a real estate professional who knows the market, knows the area, knows the audience, so that way your home can be ready to sell as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. Because when you're selling your home, most of the time you don't want to hang out in there for 80, 90 days before you get an offer. I've been there. I've helped clients through it. It sucks. It's best to just have your home as ready as possible. Trust your agent. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat with you, even if I'm just a third-party opinion, to see if what your agent's saying is just smoke or if it has some basis to it. So with that, I appreciate you watching. I encourage you to go to my website and sign up for my quarterly magazine that also dives into these details, called The Peaks. And I hope to see you in the next video.